What's up guys, and welcome to my Yakarl the Scourge guide. In my opinion, Yakarl the Scourge is an extremely powerful and extremely underrated champion in this game. And as long as your clan is at least level 9, you can begin to purchase fragments of Yakarl for 150 clan gold apiece. Now that you know how to get them, let's talk about why you should. Yakarl's A1 attacks one enemy 2 times, and each hit, when booked, has a 50% chance of placing a freeze debuff for 1 turn. He will also ignore 25% of the target's defense if they're under freeze. What makes the fact that it's a 2-hitter especially powerful is that if the first hit gets an unlucky resist, the second hit still has a chance to freeze. And in an area like Doom Tower Hard where one enemy slipping through the cracks could potentially spell disaster for your run, you're gonna need every edge you can get. Now let's cover Yakarl's A2. He attacks one enemy and has a 75% up to 100% chance of placing 30% decreased speed for 3 turns, and a 75 books to 100% chance of placing a freeze for 1 turn. Now this is the big part. He also steals 100% of the target's turn meter and places 30% increased speed on himself for 3 turns, and he also ignores 50% of the target's defense if they're under freeze. This skill makes him especially powerful against not only wave content, but against bosses as well who are susceptible to turn meter control. So he's not just reducing the turn meter, he's gaining the turn meter that he steals for himself. As you can see, he's already at a full turn meter once again. This makes him an extremely powerful turn meter control champion. He's actually capable of soloing the Fire Knight 20's turn meter. Now let's go over his A3, and I think this is the reason why he's a bit underrated. He attacks all enemies and only has a 75% chance to place a freeze debuff for 1 turn. However, the chance increases to 100% against targets with 75% or more turn meter, and if they are at high turn meter, this debuff cannot be resisted. This is particularly powerful in Doom Tower Hard, where enemies are extremely fast, and seemingly always at high or even an overflow turn meter. Now here's a good example of a place where Yakarl is good for both not only a turn meter control perspective, but a crowd control perspective. Has no trouble freezing down all 10 spiderlings, and fully controlling the big spider's turn meter by himself. Now I happen to have my Yakarl in a reflex set, but it's not necessary for this strategy. And right here, as Yakarl goes in for the attack, he steals enough turn meter to basically go straight away again and freeze all the spiderlings. His A2 is just so good. Now I'm going to show you an example of how he could be used even in progression in the late game through dungeons. This is a Fire Knight 25 run. So we're going to set up 1-2 hits here, 3-4 hits there, 5-6, 7-8, 9-10-11-12. So that'll get the shield down, and then once Deacon gets into his rotation, we should be good to go. His time compression should push the turn meter back and give Yakarl time to get that turn meter down. And we'll say don't use on the final boss because we do have him in reflex, which means he's going to come back to this skill far more often. And then we don't need Drang to do this. He's just going to put the burn and then ignite the burn over and over for damage. And then Physics, we will say don't use this and don't use this. We already get decreased speed from Yakarl's A2. So we don't need Physics to place it. Then Coldheart can kind of do whatever she wants. We'll turn off her A2 because I do have her in a refresh accessory. Oh, no. This is where we want it. We'll say don't use Heartseeker. I guess it doesn't matter, it's fine. And we'll go ahead and say don't use on round 2. Yeah, let's give this a go. Now this is not going to be a speed run. This is clearly to just illustrate his power when it comes to crowd control and turn meter control. I guess Physics is helping him with crowd control too. But Physics' provoke there is completely unnecessary. In fact, I wish I would have thought to turn it off. That was his A2. And what's great about his A2 is not only is it stealing the turn meter and allowing him to go again more quickly, but it's a 2-turn lockout against an enemy. If they were at high turn meter, which it is not really going to be the case as often in dungeons, but in Doom Tower Hard, it's a full 2-turn lockdown. Like, they were about to go, they had a high turn meter, and now they have 0 turn meter. And when their turn meter is finally full and they get a chance to go again, guess what? They're frozen. So it's effectively locking them out for 2 turns. It's just a really, really strong crowd control skill, and I think it's a little overlooked. But not a single enemy has gotten to take a turn while not under freeze. Yakarl has just been locking everyone down. So I think a lot of people look at that A3 and see that it's only got a 75% chance to freeze, and they just write them off completely. But what they don't realize or take into consideration is that he has a 100% chance to freeze on his A2 and about a 75% chance to freeze on his A1. He's just so consistent and so powerful. So we missed 1 out of 5 with that A3, but it doesn't matter, because he's so consistent. There he goes, freezing with the A1. So anyone who he misses, he can pick up with his A2 and his A1. And everyone's frozen. And now they're double frozen. And it looks like his AI wants to default to enemies who aren't frozen to attack. I think the only exception is if an enemy has really high turn meter, he'll focus them with his A2 so he gets maximum value from the turn meter steal. Or if an enemy is really low, sometimes he'll try to finish them off with the A2 because it does have good multipliers. And the reason I went with HP burn as my primary source of damage through Drang is just to show you that, like, if you're struggling to push through and the waves are giving you trouble, like, Yakarl just locks everyone down. These could be level 50 champions, and it wouldn't matter because no one's taking damage. Alright, everything's going according to plan. Then he puts decreased speed, drops a turn meter, and he got his reflex set proc there, so he's going to have that turn meter reduction up again very soon. There it is, stealing all the turn meter. He got his cooldown reduced there again. It looked like it got resisted. And there it is again. Just between Vizix, Deacon, and Yakarl, there's no way the Fire Knight's ever gonna get a turn, and then sprinkle a little Cold Heart into the mix, and it's just never gonna happen. I probably don't even need Deacon, honestly. I just didn't want to underdo the turn meter control. But just between Vizix and Yakarl, they can probably duo the turn meter together easily. Okay, so now I'm going to go over and show you how I have him built. Now, I just recently put him in this reflex set, which is why some of these pieces aren't maxed out. And this was a suggestion by a person from my community Discord, Tauren Chief. We had been discussing back and forth whether Yakarl would be worth it for his account or not, and I finally talked him into it. And he said after putting Yakarl in reflex, he was finally able to beat the level 120 hard Dark Fae. And after having that discussion, it inspired me to put mine in reflex, because I can't believe it did not occur to me to do it sooner. But because all of his cooldowns are just really powerful. His A2 is insanely powerful, his A3 is insanely powerful, and even if you don't get the reflex set, he still has a very powerful A1. It's just insane how good this champion is. And I didn't even cover his passive. He gets increased damage by 10% for each enemy in battle under freeze. And he also has damage reduction by 10% for each champion in battle under freeze. So he could potentially have like a 40-30% damage reduction when he's getting attacked by enemies in Doom Tower, which makes him extremely tanky. Like far tankier than he should be when you consider how weak his defensive base stats are. So let's just cover the stats here. He's got 29,000 HP, 3,000 defense. He is fast. Originally, before I rebuilt him, he was at 296 speed in regen and immortal gear, but I managed to get a little bit more speed into this reflex build, and he's got 371 accuracy. If you're planning to take him into Doom Tower hard, you'll need at least 350 for the waves. But we have a defense percentage chest. I would prefer HP, but I couldn't find one that wasn't already being used that had the right substats on it. And again, I would prefer HP percentage, but my reflex gear is very limited. I do not farm Ice Golem that often, really only during fusion events. And I do have him in a Blood Shield ring because he is part of my Scarab King team. I used him for floor 100 Doom Tower hard to clear the Scarab King. I use him in my Dark Fae team. He's my primary turn meter control champ alongside Lysandra and Allure. So the three of them together, and Deacon also. So I got 4 turn meter control champions. And actually, today was the first day I farmed Dark Fae with him in Reflex, and I only failed 1 out of the 8 runs. Like yesterday, before I put him in Reflex, it was like every other run was either succeed or fail, so I had a much higher success rate with him in Reflex. I'll show you his masteries. I did take the Fearsome Presence Mastery. This is to increase the likelihood that he places the freeze on his A3 when they are below 75% turn meter, as well as give him an extra 5% on each of the 2 hits of placing freeze with his A1. I think if you're pushing up through Doom Tower hard and you're relying on him as your crowd control champion, I don't want to say it's necessary, but me personally, I like to take every little bit of help I can get. So we've got just basically defensive stuff. I do have the Harvest Despair Mastery so he can place Leech when he places Freeze for a little bit of extra healing on my team. And then he's got the Counterattack Masteries, which I think are so good because his A1 is so good. Like every time he counterattacks, he's going to have a 55% chance to place Freeze on both of the A1 hits. It's just too good, especially in Doom Tower. Like any time he takes damage, it's going to be like 25% of his max HP because he is really squishy. And then I give him Evil Eye for a little bit of extra turn meter control on his A1, and I just pick up the accuracy. There's nothing else in this bottom row in the support tree that's going to give him any value, except for maybe Master Hexer and Sniper, I guess, to increase the chance that he places the Leech, and then if it does place, you could extend it for a turn. But I didn't think that was worth all the energy it would cost to farm these 2, so I just left it the way it is. If you want to do that, you can. But if you're... Now, something about Yakarl I haven't mentioned yet is he is actually capable of doing really good damage if you build him to do so. He can be a viable arena nuker for you. Is he high-end plat tier level? No, but if you're progressing through the game, he is an option. and he's also void affinity, so you don't have to worry about weak hits. And if you're going to build him as your arena nuker, you'll want to take Helm Smasher. But for me personally, on my account, I don't use him for damage. I use him purely for crowd control because he is a beast. Let him do what he wants to do. He wants to freeze people. Build him fast, give him accuracy, make sure he has good enough defensive stats so he doesn't die, and he will carry you through content he will carry you through any wave-based content in this game. Thanks for watching, everyone, and if you want to see a guide on how I used Yakarl to carry me through the waves of all 3 rotations of Doom Tower Hard, I'll put that video on the top right side of your screen here. I hope you enjoyed the video, and until next time guys, happy raiding.